Well, the Federal Deficit Commission has one job to do, and that is addressing the debt plaguing the United States. To promote economic growth, deep cuts and reforming the tax system have been the Commission's answers so far. But are they really the solutions to our problem? Well, it's time for a reality check with Veronique de Rugy. She's Senior Research Fellow for the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. Veronique, by the way, combs through the data and the claims put out by the government to really see what's missing from the big picture. She's been looking into the explosion of entitlement spending here in the United States and the impact it's had on the economy. Veronique, great to have you back with Matt and myself.
Thank you for having me.
So you know the Debt Commission. I mean, the myth that you say, the myth number one that's out there is the Debt Commission report addresses our long-term debt problem. So
that's their job, right? That's the only thing they're supposed to do.
Are they not?
That's their job, and they failed to address it. Actually, the debt crisis is the entitlement crisis, as you've said it. And the Debt Commission doesn't actually do that.
They do address Social Security.
Yes and no, to some extent, but more importantly, the explosion in spending that we're going to see. Social Security is part of it, but Medicare and Medicaid.
And that's what you say. That's the fact, that it can't, because in spite of the promises made in the report, it doesn't address the main driver of the debt explosion, and that is Medicare and Medicaid spending.
How much of a driver is Medicare and Medicaid spending?
To give you an idea, in the next 50 years, Medicare and Medicaid will consume 50% of our entire budget. 50%, half of it. You can imagine what it means is going to squeeze out massive amount of spending in other priority that we may have.
And is this not something that Obamacare addressed? I mean, wasn't that one of the points of the sweeping health care legislation, to bring health care costs down?
Well, that was one of the one of the claims, right? But when you actually look at the data, what you see is like Obamacare projection of spending kind of is really hand in hand with where the spending was going anyway.
Hey, Vincent, can you bring up that chart again? Because let's just take a look at it, because this kind of really stresses your point here. So what do we have, Veronique?
Here we have actually government spending from today moving forward, and break down between three pieces of spending. The first one at the bottom is all discretionary spending, which is education, defense, roads and things like this. The second part is Social Security spending, and you can see it's a pretty straight line. And the explosion, the white line
Medicare
going up, is Medicare and Medicaid.
And this is what, as a percentage of total spending?
Yes, and you see that today it is roughly 25%, and it's going to double.
So let's talk about something Steve Kroll brought up, and this is about, we need to see spending cuts. Myth number two, the Deficit Commission proposes sharp spending and benefit cuts. You're laughing.
Yes. This is my favorite myth of all. And I was stunned myself, because I kind of believed in it. But the Deficit Commission is increasing spending in the next 10 years by 1.6
Wait, say that again.
The Deficit Commission's plan is increasing spending by $1.6 trillion.
Between today and 2020, though. But maybe without the Deficit Commission, it would have increased by $6 trillion. Well,
actually, yes. Without the Deficit Commission, it would have increased by $5.6 trillion.
All right, so they're doing a good thing.
No. Cutting spending means actually you spend less than you are going to spend.
All right.
What they're doing here is using a typical gimmick trick, a baseline gimmick, which is just slowing the growth of spending, right? This is the equivalent, Carol, you'll understand this analogy, of me telling you, I was planning on buying 3 new pair of shoes, but I'm only going to spend 2 pair of shoes, when in fact, I actually should have been selling stuff in my closet. This is what they're doing. This is not spending cut. Spending cut means that you don't spend more than you were spending. And here they're increasing spending.
I used to use the same exact trick with my parents when I wanted them to buy me stuff.
I've used that trick so many times.
It's on sale. Dad, it's on sale.
Right, we got myth number 3, and I want to get to it because this is great stuff. Attaining tax revenue at 21% of GDP is an important part of the solution. Did I say it right?
Yes. If you believe in unicorns, the Deficit Commission.
My 7.5-year-old does.
Yeah, my 6-year-old does too. But if you actually believe that the Deficit Commission's plan can do something that the federal government has never, ever in its history, ever achieved, which is to raise tax collection to 21% of GDP. I mean,
do tax receipts sort of hover? Well, I guess here's a
So
chart.
What do we got?
Carolyn Baum has told us at some point that tax receipts, kind of regardless of rates, hover around 16-17% of GDP.
It is true. Actually, the average collection is even below 17%.
So what is this?
This chart actually shows you the historical trend, right? It's not a straight line. It goes up and down. But what it shows you is like it never actually goes above 21%. In 1944, they managed to raise for 1 year alone, 20.9% of GDP. And then proof, as you see on that chart, it fell. And in 2000, 20.6%. And again, it fell. Basically, the federal government cannot, no matter how high the rates are, manage to raise money above 19% for very long time. So actually claiming that this plan, the solution rests on being able to raise amount of taxes that they've never been able to collect before, it's unrealistic.
So 20 seconds. So net, this doesn't do anything.
No, well, actually, it raises spending. This plan, raising spending.
So it does do something. It does something it shouldn't be doing.
It raises spending and it doesn't address the debt crisis.
All right, Veronique, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.